Most people think the most expensive Rolex automatically makes you the most serious watch collector. Most people are wrong. The difference between a $5,000 Rolex and a $500,000 Rolex has almost nothing to do with how good a watch it is. It has everything to do with understanding what you are actually paying for at each level. These are the 7 levels of Rolex watches. By the end of this, you will know exactly where to spend your money, and where you are just paying for a green box and a name you already recognize. Let's go. Level 1, the entry point. This is where most first-time Rolex buyers land, and it is also where most of the confusion starts. The Oyster Perpetual is the purest Rolex that exists. No date window, no bezel complications, no extra features, just a clean dial in oyster case and a self-winding movement that Rolex has been refining for nearly a century. It starts around $5,000 at retail, which means it sits on the shelf collecting dust at authorized dealers because nobody thinks it is exciting enough to buy. That is their mistake. It is not the entry Rolex because it is somehow lesser. It is the entry Rolex because it is the most distilled version of what Rolex actually is. The case finishing, the bracelet quality, the movement reliability, all identical to watches costing 3 times as much. Oyster Perpetuals sit in cases. You can walk in tomorrow and buy one. That is not true of almost anything else on this list. The best value at level 1 is the 41mm Oyster Perpetual with a colored dial. Buy the watch people underestimate. That is almost always the right move. Level 2, the everyday icons. This is where 90% of Rolex wearers live, and there is nothing wrong with that. The Datejust is the best-selling luxury watch in human history, and it earned that title. First introduced in 1945, the first waterproof self-winding wristwatch to display the date through a window. Expect to pay $7,000 to $10,000 depending on case size, bracelet choice, and dial configuration. Here is what the marketing will not tell you. The customization that makes it appealing also makes it easy to buy the wrong one. A two-tone Datejust on a Jubilee bracelet with a fluted bezel and a white dial is a classic. It will always be a classic. A bi-color dial on an Oyster bracelet with a smooth bezel is a moment in time. It felt right when you bought it and looks dated 5 years later. The Datejust rewards restraint. The classics became classics for a reason. The Air-King also lives at level 2, around $6,000, same caliber as the Submariner, never has a waiting list. If you want a sports-adjacent Rolex without the scarcity theater, the Air-King is the honest answer. Level 3, the icons everyone actually wants. This is where Rolex stops being a watch company and becomes a cultural institution. The Submariner, the Explorer, the Sea Dweller. These are the watches that built the mythology. The Submariner debuted in 1953 as a professional diving instrument. Waterproof to 100 meters at a time when that was genuinely unprecedented. Jacques Cousteau wore one. Sean Connery wore one as James Bond. You are spending $8,000 to $12,000 at retail. On the secondary market, add 20 to 40% depending on the reference. Here's the thing about the Submariner that collectors never say out loud. It is not the most interesting Rolex. It is the most legible Rolex. Everything about that watch exists to be read quickly under pressure. It was designed for function, and function made it beautiful. Buy a Submariner because you appreciate what it is, not because you want people to think you know about watches. People who actually know about watches will respect you more for buying an Explorer. The Explorer costs less than a Submariner and is harder to find at retail. That paradox tells you everything. The best value at level 3 is the Explorer, and the collectors who figured that out a decade ago are not complaining. Level 4, the professional tier. Now we enter the territory where the watches have jobs. Real, specific, professional jobs that most wearers will never actually perform. The GMT-Master 2 was designed in partnership with Pan American Airways to help pilots track 2 time zones simultaneously. The Milgauss was built for scientists working near electromagnetic fields, shielded against magnetic interference up to 1,000 Gauss. The Yacht-Master was engineered for offshore racing. These watches solved problems that existed. You are spending $12,000 to $20,000 at retail. Here's what most people get wrong at level 4. They buy the story. The GMT-Master 2 in the Batman configuration became one of the most sought-after Rolexes of the last decade. Not because of its GMT function, but because of how it looks on a bracelet. That is completely legitimate. Aesthetics are a valid reason to buy a watch. But you should know that is what you are buying. The function is real. The reason you want it is probably the color. Learning references before spending at this level is not optional. It is homework. The Milgauss, discontinued by Rolex in 2023, means remaining new old stock is becoming genuinely scarce, and pre-owned prices have started moving accordingly. Level 5. Precious metals. This is where Rolex stops being about function and starts being about material. Every watch from level 1 through 4 exists in stainless steel. Level 5 is where gold enters the conversation. Rolex produces its own gold alloys in-house: yellow gold, white gold, and Everose. Their proprietary rose gold made to resist fading over time. An Everose Submariner, a yellow gold Datejust with a diamond dial, a two-tone GMT on a Jubilee bracelet. You are spending $20,000 to $50,000. And the price is driven more by metal content than by complication. Here is the uncomfortable truth about Level 5. Most people buy gold Rolexes because of what they communicate, not because of what they do differently. The movement inside an Everose Submariner is identical to the movement inside a steel Submariner. The timekeeping is the same. The water resistance is the same. What you are buying is a different message. That is a completely honest reason to spend the money if the money is available. But be clear-eyed about what you are purchasing. Gold Rolex watches have historically held value well, particularly yellow gold. Tastes cycle. The best value at Level 5 is the two-tone Datejust, if you can find the right configuration. Level 6. The Day Date. This watch deserves its own level. Rolex introduced it in 1956 as the first watch to display both the date and the full day of the week spelled out in a window at 12 o'clock. Made available exclusively in precious metals from day one. No steel version has ever existed. It was designed for presidents, for leaders, for people who do not need to explain what they are wearing. Eisenhower wore one. Lyndon Johnson had a collection of them. The association was so complete that the industry nickname, the President's Watch, became official terminology for the bracelet style. You are spending $35,000 to over $100,000, depending on metal, dial material, and configuration. At Level 6, you are no longer in the watch hobby. You are in a different conversation entirely. The person wearing a platinum day date is not trying to signal watch knowledge. They are signaling something else, and everyone in the room understands what it is. The danger at Level 6 is the dial game. Not all dial variations hold value equally. If you are spending at this level because you love the watch and the money genuinely does not change your life, buy the dial you love and never think about it again. That is honestly the right answer. Level 7. Vintage and collector grade. We have officially left the watch market and entered the art market. At Level 7, you find references that closed decades ago. Dials with patina that took 50 years to develop. Paul Newman Daytonas of particular rarity. Rolex Daytonas with exotic dials that became the most coveted watches on the planet, not because Rolex marketed them that way, but because collectors decided they were extraordinary and the market followed. A Paul Newman Daytona in stainless steel with a correct dial and original bracelet trades between $100,000 and over $2 million depending on the specific reference and provenance. Eric Clapton's personal Newman reference sold for close to $18 million at auction. One watch, worn, used, not new, $18 million. Here's the uncomfortable truth about Level 7. The watches that cost the most are usually the least accessible as watches. Too valuable to wear, too rare to insure affordably. Most of what drives price at Level 7 is not condition alone. It is provenance. It is documentation. An unpolished case from 1965 is worth more than a polished case on the same reference because polishing removes original material and with it, proof of authenticity. At this level, wear and age are not flaws. They are credentials. 7 levels, $5,000 to $18 million. The sweet spot for the serious collector who plans to wear and enjoy their watch lives between levels 3 and 5. The best Rolex is the one you actually put on your wrist. The rest is just very expensive furniture in a very green box. Which level are you at? Drop it in the comments. Subscribe for more. See you in the next one.